How to deal with a child who complains constantly. First, remember that complaining is not a problem. Complaining and whining is something that you even have 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, and 30-year-olds still doing to this day. It's kind of how we started communicating when we had no language, when we had no ability to use a vocabulary. We made noises and screamed to let people know we were hungry, we needed our diaper changed, etc. Complaining is not a problem, it's communication. And although it might not be as high vibrational as other forms of communication, all it is still communication. So when we are triggered by our child complaining or whining, it's an opportunity for us to either match that energy and to complain and whine about them complaining and whining, or to not even just match their energy, but even take it lower by screaming at them or hitting them for complaining and whining. This only teaches them that complaining and whining is a valid form of communication. So it's an opportunity to pause, breathe, and respond from a higher energy.
Yeah, but you don't understand. My child complains all the time, and I'm overstimulated, and the sound, the whining, the complaining, it drives me up the wall, and I just don't know how on earth am I able to deal with that? Like, I hear what you're saying, but it happens all the time. Well, one of the things we want to be aware of is like when we constantly say, when we constantly think that my child complains 24/7, that thought, when we think that over and over again, we actually start to believe it. When we actually look at our day to day, our children do not complain and whine 24/7. Like 24/7 literally means every minute, every hour, my child is complaining and whining. And when we really look at our day to day interactions with them, it's not constantly. It pays to be aware of how often our children are not complaining and whining, and how often they are laughing, playing, giving us hugs and kisses, um, communicating verbally in sentences. Like, we want to give that attention as well. We don't want to just focus on the moments that they do complain and whine. Because if we focus on that, then that's all we see. And then when we see them, all we think about, we're not really able to see them, see the amazingness that they are, see the love and light that they are. We're not able to see that. It's still true, but it's hard for us to see that and treat them that way if all we're thinking constantly and telling our friends constantly and family and telling ourselves all the time is they whine all the time. Furthermore, the irony in this is that us constantly saying that they are whining all the time is us whining and complaining all the time. The only difference is that us whining and complaining all the time about our children or other life circumstances, there's no one to hit us or beat us about it. There's no one that can really scream at us about whining and complaining all the time. So the pattern of that just continues on and on and on until we notice it, become aware of it, and then make a choice to refrain from whining and complaining all the time about life in general and also about our children whining and complaining all the time. And when we make that decision to stop complaining ourselves, we're showing ourselves a lot of grace and mercy and love, because whining and complaining, it's just it just drains us of our energy. It leaves us feeling tired, and then we tend to blame parenthood on us feeling drained and tired, when no, it's what we're choosing to think about and focus on. We, in the same moment that we could be complaining about something, we also have an ability to get creative about that very thing, to be solution oriented, right? And then it's like, well, how do I get solution oriented about my child complaining all the time? It's recognizing that complaining is just communication. Complaining and whining is communication. When an infant is whining or screaming, we don't beat them for it, because they're an infant. They're 2 months, 3 months old. They're communicating the best that they can. They're showing their suffering. They're showing that they don't feel peace in the moment. And they're not able at the age of 2 months old to say, Hello there. I am suffering and I need some assistance, right? They're 2 months old. So they're expressing, they're communicating their suffering the best way they can from their level of awareness. And that's the same thing that a 4 year old's doing, that a 3 year old's doing, that a 7 year old's doing, that my 9 year old is doing, that we as adults are doing when we are speaking and expressing ourselves from a lower vibration than peace, bliss, and joy, right? We are not being bad kids or bad adults or any negative label you could put on us for complaining or whining. It just doesn't fit when you're looking at it from the eyes of love, right? It's just, oh shit, this person is suffering, and the words coming out of their mouth, the noises coming out of their mouth, is them expressing their suffering the best they can from their level of awareness, from where they're at. They're just suffering right now. And when we see it like that, then we naturally are able to shift into compassion. And it's like, well, no, I don't really want to beat you right now. I don't really want to hit you right now. I don't really want to scream at you right now. I'm aware that you're suffering right now. And these noises and sounds and words that are coming out of your mouth are because you're suffering, because you're not comfortable or you're not getting something that you want. This is you vocalizing that and verbalizing that. And me as an adult whining about you whining is just really showing you that it's possible for even an adult that's 26 years older than you to also whine and complain. So it really wouldn't make sense for me to beat you or scream at you for it, since I'm also whining and complaining. So instead, what I have the opportunity to do here is I understand what it feels like to not get what I want and to suffer and to feel irritated, right? And so now what I get to do with you is I get to just communicate back to you from my level of awareness, right? Compassion, and to literally speak to you about it. I understand where you're coming from. No, we're not going to do this right now, but you'll be able to do it later, or just whatever naturally comes through you to address what's happening from your level of awareness, from your compassion and understanding that your child is suffering, right? And then you're no longer a victim of their whining and complaining and the whiny noises that they make. You're no longer a victim to that. You no longer feel oppressed by their expression because you see it for what it is. Just communication the best they can from their level of awareness, and something that you're familiar with too, because you know what it feels like to suffer when you don't get what you want. You know what it feels like to complain and to whine because life is just not going the way you want it, right? So instead of trying to stop the yelling, stop the whining, stop the complaining, instead of trying to shame them for it or make them feel less than for it, like, oh my gosh, you're 8 years old, you just shouldn't be whining or what, instead of whining ourselves and complaining ourselves and not accepting what's happening in the moment ourselves, it's just an opportunity. Okay, you're communicating, my turn to communicate, and you get to show them an embodiment of emotional intelligence. You get to show them an embodiment of accepting other people's expressions, accept what it looks like to accept someone else's suffering, someone else that's suffering in your presence. You get to show them what it's like to accept that and to not run from that, not run from it, not shame them for it, but to meet them there, see where they're at, and to still speak to them lovingly and to communicate about what's happening in the moment. The less that we run away from the uncomfortable feeling of being triggered by our child when they're whining and complaining, the less we run away from that uncomfortable feeling, that intense surge of energy within us when we are triggered, the less we run from that, the stronger our capacity gets to hold space for that, to hold space for what we're feeling. Therefore, the stronger our capacity is to hold space for other people in our environment as well. So, yeah, complaining is not a problem. It's communication. It's other people communicating the best they can from where they're at emotionally, from their level of awareness, from where they're at in the moment. They're just doing the best that they can where they're at. When our children are complaining, they're not diabolically trying to piss us off. It doesn't have to be something that makes you drain yourself of your energy anymore by screaming and hitting and having power struggles because they're complaining. Don't let someone else's lower level of energy be a reason why you leave your peace.